never said I oppose fracking. Show the tape. Put it on your website. Put it on the website.
Live from Clark Studios in Rochester, New York. Broadcasting around the world. You're listening to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
It is that time of the year again, and no, I do not mean Christmas is coming. I'm talking something not so exciting, and it has to do with schools closing across the country at rapid pace, and parents are not happy. Once again, we're entering the winter season where coronavirus seems to dominate the agenda. Schools start shutting down left, right, and center, leaving parents, children, teachers frustrated beyond belief, and there is nothing that any of us can do about it. Our government has been held hostage by the unions, and they are not letting go of their draconian vice, and they have no consideration at all to the pain and the suffering and the heartache and the absolute chaos that is being caused at home. Some people think we're selfish for wanting our kids to get back into school. We think you're selfish for allowing our government to tear families apart. Today, we're going to take a look at what's happening across the country, but primarily we're going to focus on New York City and my home county, Monroe. Today's episode hits a little bit close to home, and I have single-handedly seen what's happening to the parents and the children in this county. It's horrific, and the government should be ashamed of themselves for putting all of us through it. Yesterday in Monroe County, there was a protest, a very peaceful protest. Channel 8 showed up to that protest, not to cover the actual protest. They actually could care less about anything that was discussed. The only thing they cared about was the fact that we didn't have our masks on. Well done, Channel 8. What an excuse for a news agency. Let's dive right into it today, and we'll head into the keyboard warrior cam, and we're going to listen to what parents across the country have to say about the ridiculousness of schools closing again.
Time to get our kids back in school now.
Yep.
Yes.
Schools are safe! Schools are safe! Schools are safe!
Schools are safe. Schools are safe. They continue to chant all across New York City. Why is New York City closing schools again? Is it because there are a record number of deaths? Is it because there's proof that children are giving teachers coronavirus? Nope, there's none of that. 0 cases of any of it. And we're about to learn from Dr. Baker, who spoke at the rally yesterday, exactly why we do not need to be worried about coronavirus affecting our children in school. It is safe. The medical experts across the board keep telling everybody it is safe. So why on earth is de Blasio and the rest of the local Monroe County politicians and health officials demanding that we keep our kids home? Because of a benchmark? Because we're now in an orange zone? What does that even mean? Why are we putting these ridiculous statistics on our children's lives? We can't breach the 3% mark. So what? We breached the 3% mark. What does that mean? Cases are going up. Well, cases are going to continue to go up if you keep testing these kids. Why are we so obsessed with testing? Let's listen to what Dr. Baker said yesterday about the fact that there is 0 evidence that suggests we need to keep these kids home.
As I just said, the risk that COVID-19 poses to school-age children is extremely small. Of the 313 deaths attributed to COVID-19 so far in Monroe County, 0 of these deaths have occurred in anyone under the age of 30. 0. According to the Centers for Disease Control, if a child contracts COVID-19, the odds that they will die is approximately 1 in 33,000. This is extremely unlikely. To give you an idea just how unlikely, according to the National Weather Service, the odds of being struck by lightning are 1 in 15,300. In other words, if a child contracts COVID-19, the odds that they will die from it are less than half as likely as that they will be struck by lightning. Nationwide, 133 child deaths have been attributed to COVID-19 since the beginning of the pandemic. In an average flu season, over 500 children die of the flu. We do not close our schools for months at a time because of the flu, nor should we. We certainly should not close them for 8 months and counting for an illness that causes 1/4 of the number of child fatalities that the flu causes in an average season. No matter how you slice it, the risk that COVID-19 poses to children is extremely small. Second, teaching school is safe during the pandemic. There have been 0 documented cases of teachers in Monroe County contracting COVID-19 from their students, resulting in their death. 0 cases.
Now, I know the audio wasn't that great, but I'm going to summarize for you guys. We're going to kind of break this down right now, and I'm going to repeat what Dr. Baker, a very renowned and respected medical professional in the Monroe County area, I'm going to break down what he said, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to try to get it through those people's heads who don't really get why we're overreacting to the government locking us down. Of the 313 deaths contributed to COVID-19 so far in Monroe County, 0 of these deaths have occurred in anyone under the age of 30. We're not even remotely close to the age of children in school. It's not like we're sitting here discussing the fact that, oh, we're treading on thin waters here because, 18-year-olds are dying, 19-year-olds are dying. No, 0 out of 313 deaths here in Monroe County, 0 have died from coronavirus. Okay, so according to the CDC, if a child contracts COVID-19, the odds that they will die is 1 in 33,000. Dr. Baker continued to go on to say, 1 out of 33,000. Those are the odds of a child who contracts COVID-19. 1 in 33,000 odds of that kid dying. To put this into perspective, there is a chance of getting struck by lightning greater than the chance of dying of COVID-19. The chance of getting struck by lightning is 1 in 15,300. There is a 2 times greater risk of dying of COVID-19. There's a 2 times greater risk of getting struck by lightning than a child dying of COVID-19. So that's the first kind of point that he wanted to make. He's trying to demonstrate that we are overreacting, that we are ruining families, destroying lives, tearing communities apart, bankrupting businesses, all for a 1 in 33,000 chance of a child dying from COVID. You have a greater chance of being struck by lightning. Kids die every year from the flu. No one under 30 has died in Monroe County of COVID-19 under the age of 30. Now let's take a look at a nationwide level. Nationwide, 133 child deaths have been contributed to COVID-19. 133 since the beginning of the pandemic. In the average flu season, over 500 children die of the flu. We don't mask up. We don't go COVID crazy. We don't lock down every single winter because children die from the flu. Over 500 children every single year die from the flu. 0 children have died from COVID-19 under the age of 30. What are we freaking out exactly about here? Why are we putting ourselves through this? Because of a benchmark that some politician and a few health officials decided sounded right? It makes no sense at all. Children are suffering, and we're going to listen in a minute to Dr. Baker at the end of this video, or at the end of this live. We're going to discuss just how traumatized and how severe the psychological effects are on these children, and why this is a horrible idea that we are about to go back into a lockdown. Now, we've discussed children, so we know what happens with children, but what about the teachers? What about the teachers contracting coronavirus? Isn't that what this is really all about? Well, medical experts, based on their medical research, not just Monroe County, but nationwide, have said repeatedly that schools are safe for both students and teachers to be teaching and learning in person, and that there isn't a single case, 0 documented cases of teachers in Monroe County contracting COVID and dying from it as a result from it being passed on from a child. So 0 documented cases of a teacher contracting COVID and then dying because of it. Not one. And there are teachers of all ages. We have young teachers, we have older teachers. Not one of them has died from contracting COVID. They keep telling us to follow the science. Cuomo keeps saying, follow the science. Medical experts are screaming, get our kids in school. The science says it's safe. So why on earth are we back in this orange zone situation where schools all over Monroe County are starting to shut down again? Not a single district in Monroe County is fully open right now. Rochester City Schools in Monroe County, Rochester City Schools haven't opened at all. Have any of you thought what this is doing to these families, to their livelihoods? If schools are closed, how do parents teach their kids and continue to focus on their jobs and continue to bring in an income? This is a classic example of the rich are going to keep getting richer and the poor are going to keep getting poorer. We are suppressing those who are not in a position to afford daycare or to afford a babysitter. Life is hard enough for so many of these people. And the government, the politicians, the health experts who are looking down on all of us thinking, what's your problem? Aren't we supposed to be taking care of each other? They're the ones who have their paychecks. They're going to bring home a nice hefty salary at the end of the month. I'd like to challenge every single one of these professionals, every one of them. You do not take another paycheck until this pandemic is over. Then we'll see how excited you are about these lockdowns, how excited you really are about pulling our children from school. Are you home trying to teach your child because they're remote learning and nearly on the cusp of getting fired by your employer because you can't perform, you can't keep up? Of course they're not. The teachers, the politicians, they have nannies, they have babysitters. While they're in surgery, the nannies are taking care of their children, who are probably getting 10 times the remote learning experience than most of your children are, because someone is looking after them. They're at work doing what they need to do. Divorce is going through the roof. Crime is up. It's a horrific situation. And no wonder people are furious across the country. Let's head back and see what more people across New York City and Monroe County are saying about how horrific this situation really is.
Decisions would be made based upon data and science. Well, the data and science are in, and the risk of spread in schools is low, and the harm that we are doing to our children is high.
Follow the science, follow the data. That's what we've been doing. These are protests in New York City that you just saw here. Parents by the thousands, over 300,000 parents in New York, or children in New York City are being affected right now. Over 300,000. That is a tremendous amount of lives that are suffering right now because of this. Follow the science. We are following the science. We continue to follow the science. Let's take a look.
There is growing evidence that so long as kids wear masks and socially distance, schools are not a breeding ground for spreading the virus. The head of the city's Department of Education admitted as much.
But our schools have opened and been remarkably safe with a 0.19 positivity rate. They've also been safe havens for our children, and we know our students need that interaction.
So here you have it. You have a medical expert saying that schools are safe. Schools are safe. Get our kids back into school. They have repeatedly voiced their concerns. They have repeatedly told politicians that it's okay to get our kids back in school. It is okay to have kids and teachers be in in-person learning. Why aren't we listening to them? You just heard another medical expert in New York City say it's okay. Get our kids back into school. Fauci is even saying keep our kids in school. So the frustration boils down to why Democratic, and this is mostly occurring in Democratic-run states. Why is it when you have national leaders saying it's okay for the kids to be in school, but then Democratic-run states say, nope, we're not interested in the likes of Fauci anymore. We're going to call the shots the way that we see fit, and we're going to come up with our own outrageous and unrealistic rules that are going to basically force schools to close because they won't be able to keep up with them. Why does Mendoza think he knows better than the likes of Fauci? Why does he need to take Fauci's recommendations to a whole other level? Why does Cuomo need to think that he knows something that our federal government and some of the best and most reputable pharmaceutical companies in the world know? Why do they think they know better? It blows my mind that we continue to listen to these people. Let's take a look at some other protests and very contradicting information that's going to really open our eyes to the situation.
$300,000 children, many from working families who rely on schools for childcare.
I am sick as a working mom of waiting, checking Twitter to see if schools are going to be open tomorrow and how to juggle my work responsibilities and tell my daughter again to buck up. She should be grateful for 1 to 2 days of school a week.
Private and religious schools in the city can remain open.
Private and religious schools in the city can remain open. How does that make any sense? How does it make any sense that religious schools and private schools get to stay open when public schools do not? I'll tell you why it makes sense. It's very clear. It's very clear. It's very unfair, but it's very, very clear. Public schools will continue to pay their school taxes. I will pay my school taxes whether the kids are in school or not. The government is going to get their public school taxes. They are going to get their taxes, and that is why they don't care that they're locked down. Now, private schools, religious schools, if those private schools get shut down, guess who loses out on the tax money by the revenue generated from those private schools? Of course, the government. So if you send your kid to a private school, you're allowed to keep going to in-person learning. We're not going to mess with you guys because we really need that tax money. Public schools, we don't care because we're going to shut you down. We're going to still take our tax money. Hence the reason you now have protesters screaming at the top of their lungs, no school, no taxes. In the beginning of this pandemic, I got murdered when I was one of the very first people to come out and voice my concerns on this situation. I said, why are we still paying taxes if these kids are not going to get a education that these taxes pay for? And of course, I was crucified over such selfish comments. Well, there's more to it than this. We're supposed to be taking care of each other. We're supposed to be looking out for each other. It's just temporary. Yeah, it's been 8 months now. Our children have been out of school for 8 months. So this temporary, it's all going to blow over situation has now almost lasted a year. And now that we're going back into winter, I don't see any signs of it slowing down. So it is absolutely hypocritical that if we are so concerned about coronavirus, if we are that concerned about the elderly and the immune compromised, if we're so concerned about these people, then why the hell are private and religious schools still open? Why can I still send my son to daycare? Because I'm paying, and the government wants that money. Do you see how corrupt this is? Do you see how hypocritical the entire thing is? It's outrageous that public schools are closed because we're so concerned, but private schools and religious schools continue to remain open. It's very hypocritical. And when you look at what's going on and you open your eyes to the situation, it's got to make you wonder what any of this is for. Let's take a look at some other press on what's going on across the state and the country.
In many parts of Europe where coronavirus cases have surged, schools remain open, while businesses like bars, gyms, and restaurants have closed. The sense there is that schools are the priority and should be the last to close.
Schools are open in the UK and Europe. It's a priority that these schools stay open. Why? Because the children's education is worth more than any of this. The UK is suffering. Coronavirus is through the roof. They're suffering. Stores are shutting, bars are shutting, restaurants, gyms, all closed, but children are the priority. Why aren't they the priority in the United States of America? No, let me ask you this. Why aren't they the priority in Democratic-run states? Are children's lives more valuable in the UK and Europe than American lives? Are children's lives more valuable in red states than blue states? Are children's lives more valuable in private schools than public schools? Do you see what this is doing? Public school students are not getting an education right now. We are failing our children. The UK and Europe is open. Private schools are open. Red states are fully open. You are government officials causing such a divide right now. You are single-handedly causing children in blue-run states and public schools to not remain on the same playing field anymore. The trickle-down effect from all of this is tearing families apart. You are bankrupting households, bankrupting lives. People are not going to be able to rebound from this. And all because of what? We breached a 3% positivity rate out of all cases tested in Monroe County. Stop testing. Let's focus on deaths. When there's a problem, then maybe we can start to consider a solution for it. There isn't even a problem. There isn't even a blip or a speck of an issue at this point. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So now I'd like to do this. We've listened to experts. We've listened to protesters. Let's take a look at how News 8 handled the coverage yesterday, which, by the way, was poor and a sorry excuse for a news story, because all News 8 did was show up yesterday. They showed up and they sat, and I watched them, and I was there. I lived the entire thing. I sat there and watched News 8 sit 20 feet back. Let's see if we can go back to an early clip here. Sat 20 feet back behind Dr. Baker. Okay, let's take a look here. Dr. Baker was presenting News 8. You can't even see them. They were that far back out of this frame right here. News 8 stood 20 to 30 feet behind Dr. Baker, who was incredible, by the way, and gave such refreshing information and reassured the public that there's no reason for concern. But News 8 stood 30 feet behind him, filming his back. Why? Because the only thing they cared about was catching all of the protesters without their masks on. That was the big epic story that News 8 in Rochester, New York came out to film. That is a sorry excuse for a news story, and you guys should be ashamed of yourself for not reporting real news. But I expect that because they're clearly following the CNN playbook to forcing the narrative down people's throats. That is not news coverage. Let's take a look at the remarks and the comments from people across Rochester, New York, and how they and what they thought about the coverage. So News 8 reports a group of demonstrators gathered in Rochester Monday to protest COVID-19 restrictions and Governor Andrew Cuomo's handling of the pandemic. Very few in attendance were wearing masks. Why is that even a story? The story was not to go and cover people not wearing masks. Newsflash, News 8, you want to cover that type of garbage, just walk around Rochester for a day and you'll find plenty of people not wearing a mask. We were outside first of all, we were outside and we were there to protest. And from what I gather, masks and social distancing rules don't apply to protests, right? After all, look at what happened at Black Lives Matter in Rochester, New York. We didn't see you criticizing people for not wearing masks at the BLM riots, did we? Nope. We sure as hell saw you criticizing Republican supporters, Trump supporters causing chaos and violence, but we didn't see you cover rioting and looting and stealing and chastising these people for the violent acts they committed, and we certainly didn't see you cover lack of mask wearing. So here we are. News 8 showed up yesterday, and they covered the fact that people weren't wearing masks. Let's see what people have to say. Rochester protesters rally against COVID-19 restrictions in Rochester, quoting, "This is ridiculous. After everything that I just presented to you all, how could you not think this is ridiculous? How could you not think this is absolutely asinine based on all the evidence, the proof, and just common sense? Common sense needs to prevail at some point. When are our politicians going to start using their damn heads? When are the people going to start realizing that this is really not that big of a deal and that we are causing so much drama and chaos for nothing?" Let's see what the keyboard warriors had to say. Carolyn says, "So much uproar when people are peacefully standing up for their rights, unmasked. Yet when people are out, they're rioting, looting, and beating people unmasked. That's okay. You turn a blind eye to that and choose to focus your energy on people who are literally fighting for our children, our rights, and the freedoms that are being taken away from us. Please just stop. If you are that scared, then you stay home. And let the rest of us go on with our lives." Cue all the triggered people to comment now. That's a very good point. It's something that I've been voicing for a while now. And I'll say it again. If you are that scared, please, I'm begging you. We're all begging you. If you are that scared, stay home. Don't go out. A vaccine's on the way. If you are that scared for your life, don't leave your house. Let the rest of us get out there for you. Let us grow this economy. Let us work so that the economy doesn't collapse. Let us do that for you. And you know what? And I voiced this before. Why do we not just give the stimulus relief package to people like you who want to stay home, who are scared? If you're old, if you're sick, let's give the relief package to you. Don't worry about me. I'm not worried about me. Let's worry about you who are scared and who are nervous. I'd rather you get the COVID pay. I'd rather that money go to people who are seriously vulnerable. I don't need a COVID relief package. I would rather get back to work myself. I would rather earn my own income. I don't need this country to turn into a socialist agenda where I expect to now get a handout. I'm all good with that. I would rather work. I'm not worried about coronavirus. Let me go to work. Let me earn. Let me support this economy while you sit home and wait for a vaccine. How is that unfair on anyone's point or on anybody's part? Let's scroll down and take a look at some of the other comments made by residents in the Rochester, New York area. Schools aren't hot spots for COVID, and they are essential to the well-being of children, Cecilia says. This crowd is rightfully pushing back on the state's disproportionate measures to fight the disease. Again, 0 cases out of 313 deaths in Monroe County. 0 cases under the age of 30. It's very disproportionate. If New York City has a problem, New York City can deal with it. We have different problems upstate. We aren't as densely populated. We aren't and should not be put within the same statistical categories as the likes of the largest and most densely populated city in the world. It is very disproportionate. You're absolutely right, Cecilia. Let's scroll down. Let's take a look at some of the other comments. All you morons blaming others for allegedly not wearing masks when the real monster is Cuomo and the people who blindly follow him. Listen, I got in an argument earlier. Somebody said, how selfish of it is of you all to not be wearing masks. The protesters at this rally, they are not anti-maskers. They were great people. Great people. They're not anti-maskers. They're out there fighting for your paycheck. They took time off of their busy schedule to voice their frustrations so that you can continue to earn a paycheck. And if you're one of the lucky ones who are home collecting unemployment, who have a safe job collecting an income, that's great. Then go about your business and earn. But there are so many people, tens of millions of people throughout the country who can't earn right now. And that was what this protest was about. We all want the same thing. We all want to protect each other. We just have different ways of going about it. You want to stay home, that's fine. I want to work, that's equally as fine. But nobody should be telling us, it is unconstitutional to be telling us what we should be doing because of a pandemic and a virus that has a 99.8% survival rate. It is unconstitutional. Here's my comment. I am begging all seniors and immune compromised to stay home and take care of yourselves while the rest of us get on with our lives. You will get your vaccine soon. Until then, worry about yourselves and leave those who want to get back to work and school alone. We are no longer interested in what you have to say. Stay home if you are worried. Listen, if you're collecting a paycheck, I don't care what you have to say. As an entrepreneur, I need to fight for my income and I need to deal with the economic collapse of this local region. And that is a problem that I have to face and I have to face alone. Unless you're willing to give me a subsidized paycheck, I'm not interested in what you have to say. If you have no children, and your lives aren't being impacted by this, I'm not interested in what you have to say. And I don't think that anybody else should be either. I think it's a very reasonable request. Stay home if you're worried. We are way past the point of caring what those who aren't affected have to say about the situation. Tom says, now that science has proven this virus causes nothing more than a cold to kids under 22, many people that were a part of this protest at least want their children to return to school and other activities full time. If you care about kids and their mental and physical well-being, you should want this too. Here are some simple questions to help you understand the science. And thank you, Tom, for writing all of this. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to post the science. How many K through 12 students in New York State have died since going back to school? Answer, none. How many college students in New York State have died from COVID since going back to school? None. How many K through 12 teachers and college professors in New York State have died from COVID since going back to school? None. Therefore, until something changes, there is zero risk for getting kids back to school full time. There is a much higher risk for 17-year-olds driving, yet most of us allow our kids to do that as we can't live life in a bubble. If you are afraid for yourself or your children's well-being, you have every right to stay away from students and teachers as well to homeschool your own children. If you walk past these students, teachers at Wegmans, both you and them are wearing masks, and I've been told often how safe these masks make us, so no one should be worried. If you want to refute this argument or these numbers with intelligence, please do. I'd be interested in seeing your evidence. It's a great and very powerful statement by Tom, and I appreciate you putting that out there for all of those who are so disgusted that masks weren't worn at yesterday's protest. Here's why we're not that concerned. And you better believe that these people do wear their masks. Yesterday, they didn't feel the need to because they were outside. Were they all practicing social 6 feet distance? Not necessarily, but neither were all the rioters, looters, and everybody who burned down cities throughout this country for the last 5 months. It works both ways, people. Before I end today's show, I want to show you what Dr. Baker said yesterday about the psychological effects and how severely damaged our children are. And if this doesn't scare you into wanting to get your kids back into school ASAP, then I have no hope and no faith for many of you parents. Let's take a look at what Dr. Baker had to say. This has to do with the psychological effects of the damage caused by keeping our children at home.
Statements parents have submitted to us. One parent. My daughter has always had anxiety, but in September was diagnosed with depression and put on Zoloft. She's 9. Another, newly suicidal. Trips to CPEP, the pediatric emergency department, have been unsuccessful because of a lack of beds available and because she's not, quote unquote, suicidal enough. Another, she has locked herself in the bathroom and has been banging her head while repeatedly saying, "I'm stupid." 5 days a week, basically the days that she has remote learning. We're just getting started. 25% of respondents, 1 in every 4, reported that their child or children had engaged in self-harm, such as cutting, hair pulling, head banging, and so on, as a result of school closure. Here's a few of their comments. One parent, our son has formed a tic and our daughter is banging her head, pulling her hair, scratching her face, and has taken her Chromebook on one occasion and hit her head twice. I've had to remove access to pills as she has threatened to kill herself. Another parent bangs head on furniture when finding out schools are closed again. Cries and throws tantrums. States she misses her friends, teachers, and learning. It's very severe and occurs anytime school closes. Another parent, cutting arms with razor blades. Middle school. Responses like these go on and on. I'll say it again, this is child abuse on an industrial scale.
This is child abuse on an industrial scale. For those of you who didn't hear the audio that well, 9-year-olds are depressed. 9-year-olds. Depressed and are now on Zoloft. Middle school, cutting her arms. One parent reported that her child is suicidal, but the medical experts won't do anything because she's not suicidal enough. Kids are banging their heads on their computers repeatedly. 1 out of 4 students have threatened self-harm. One mother said she had to remove access to pills because she's scared her son is going to overdose on them because he keeps threatening suicide. And several children have already committed suicide because they can't handle what's being done to them. This is not fair for these children. We're causing so much more harm, and all for what? These are psychological scars that are going to be left on our children for life if we don't get back them in school ASAP. Yes, this COVID situation will blow over, but how many children have to suffer permanently, chronically, and fatally until that happens? Even one child suicide is too many compared to the data presented amongst the communities in COVID-19. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you want to be a guest on the show, please email guest@youmadeitpolitical.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have a great rest of the day and stay safe out there. We'll see you Thursday at 12 p.m. here at You Made It Political. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for listening to You Made It Political with Matt Clark. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show, or leave us a review on iTunes. And if you like our show or want to know more, check out youmadeitpolitical.com.